Guys, welcome. Today we're going to be looking at European exploration. So, European exploration is going to change our lives forever for many reasons. One of the big reasons I think is food. It's going to change food, it's going to change cultures. We're going to spread all over the world now. We're going to discover new places. It's an interesting time. So, let's get into this. All right. So, why did people begin exploring? Well, we had the Black Plague, right? Nothing like the coronavirus. The Black Plague was incredibly deadly. People had no idea how to prevent it. Some people were wearing masks back then. They were called plague doctor masks, but nothing like today. It killed off millions of people. People were dying all over. And after the Black Plague kind of tore through Europe, there was kind of a rebirth. And this rebirth was called the Renaissance. And when the Renaissance started, we had a lot of rebirth of art. Art inspired by the Romans and the Greek cultures of old. And you get this new style of art because up till now we had a lot of death and dark paintings with skeletons and the Grim Reaper and just these nasty, nasty stuff. And then all of a sudden we get this rebirth and we get images like the Mona Lisa and we get the Sistine Chapel and we get David, the famous statue of David and things like this. So one of the things that happens during this time period is we begin to trade with Asia. So we begin to trade with Asia, and this is probably one reason why the Black Plague spread over to Europe. Was through Asia. It's believed the Black Plague potentially started in the province of Wuhan, where they had the coronavirus outbreak. Interesting, right? But it spread through these trade routes and eventually got back to Europe. One of the big reasons why trade was so popular with Asia was Asia had all these spices. So the people in Europe, they didn't have a lot of spices. They were very limited in what they had. And now all of a sudden you begin trying these dishes over in Asia, and they had a lot of flavor and spice to them, and people were like, yeah, we really like this. This is really good stuff. So they wanted more of that, and they wanted to experience that. So trade began to increase. Okay, and the problem is people really didn't know how to get to Asia. Okay, we had these giant land routes that went all across most of Asia just to get out to parts of China or maybe even get over to Japan. But you had these giant land routes. And it was just very time consuming and slow. So they began to explore and they were trying to find new and quicker routes to get out to Asia. So some of the motivation for exploration, it begins with the Ottoman Empire. It really begins with Marco Polo and his exploration and his just journey out to Asia and all of the things that he witnessed and he inspired a whole generation, essentially, of explorers because of what he did. So he's really the first explorer we get into. And I'm not really going to talk too much about him, but you can research him. We've already looked a little about him in class. Portugal is really the dominant player at first when it comes to exploration. They're the ones wanting to get out and to find different ways to get out to Asia. So Portugal is the first country to go around Africa. Up until this point, it sounds silly, right? We're able to pull up satellite images of the entire Earth. We can see all over the place, right? Well, they had some risky explorers because they didn't know where they were going. So they just followed the shoreline, essentially, and they stayed close to Africa, and they were eventually able to make it all the way around Africa. Turns out Africa is a huge continent, and it took them a while to get around there. Vasco da Gama, he becomes the first man to get to India. Portugal wants to control the spice trade. They're trying to overpower the Muslim empires out there, the Ottoman Empire, to control the spice trade. So you have to think about where Spain is located, right? Spain's right there, and Portugal's right next to it. So for them to get out to Asia, it's a long land journey, right? They've got to travel all this way just to get out to Asia. So for Portugal and Spain, it's much quicker to just sail, right? So they begin looking for different ways to get out there, and sailing is obviously the most suitable suitable way to get out to Asia. So they're looking for the New World, not the New World, I'm sorry. They're looking to get out to Asia. Spain, Queen Isabella, they agree to sponsor a guy by the name of Christopher Columbus's expedition. Columbus's theory is that he could sail west and reach Asia much faster than going all the way around Africa. Okay, his thought was, hey, if we sail out, he didn't know about all this stuff here. Okay, he thought none of that was there. Okay, he thought it would be faster to get out there. He thought the Earth was a lot smaller than it actually is. Oh well, we all make mistakes, right? So turns out Christopher Columbus, he gets to the Caribbean in 1492. He sailed the ocean blue in 1492. He begins referring to the natives that he runs into as Indians. He finds very little gold, but the fact that he does find some gold, that's probably not good, right? He will eventually make 3 different voyages to the New World. He is not kind to Native Americans. There are some interesting stories where he is essentially like taken hostage, and he knows about an eclipse that's happening in a week, and he tells the natives there, hey, if you don't release me, I'll block out the sun, and they kind of laugh at him, and then the eclipse happens, and they're like, oh, this guy is a god, he knows what he's doing, so they release him. Interesting stories. He kills many natives. He's not the best, but yeah, anyway. He dies without ever figuring out that he discovered a whole new set of continents. He had no idea about North and South America. He died thinking he had discovered some islands over here. So, Christopher Columbus is going to trigger many other explorers. Okay, he finds a little bit of gold. They know there's land out there now. They know they can sail west and get somewhere. Okay, they're not quite sure where yet, but somewhere. The 3 biggest reasons for people wanting to lead off into exploration is for God, glory, and gold. Obviously, Christopher Columbus, we still talk about him today, right? We don't talk about many other people from the year of 1492. Okay, he's the big player from that year and generation. But glory is one of the big reasons. You know, he was the big celebrity of the time. Gold. There's rumors of gold. You get gold, you're going to be pretty wealthy, right? And God. They want to spread Christianity throughout the globe. They think these natives are savages and they're worshiping false idols and things like this, and they want to spread God as well. So the 3 big factors, that will come into play, guys. Don't forget about that. God, glory, and gold. So there's all these different theories now. They say, okay, hey, if we can explore the Northwest Passage, that's a faster route to Asia. If they sail all the way up here, right? That was the theory. All the way up here, the Northwest Passage. Well, that's a great idea. However, there's a lot of problems with this. It's cold, it freezes, ships can get stuck in ice. And if it's a really cold year, your ship might get stuck there for a long period of time. And your food sources are very limited. So the Northwest Passage, there's all sorts of stories of people going up there to explore. They're all pretty sad for the most part. Lots of people will get lost up there and stranded, and there's all sorts of interesting stories that happen up there exploring the Northwest Passage. Then we get conquering the New World. Okay, we get this guy named Amerigo Vespucci in 1497. He will sail down the coast of Brazil and Argentina. He eventually figures out it's not Asia. Okay, he's the first to coin the word New World as a description. America will eventually be named after Amerigo, right? You also get these other guys, these Spaniards named conquistadors, which is essentially a word for conqueror. The two big ones are Hernan Cortez and Francisco Pizarro. Cortez shows up and he will conquer the Aztecs in Mexico City. Cortez will bring disease, and disease is the big killer of the cultures down in South America. Lots of smallpox and other diseases that they unknowingly or potentially knowingly brought. You get his cousin, Francisco Pizarro, who will show up in Peru, and he will conquer the Peruvian Empire that we refer to as the Incas. And he will conquer them, and he'll steal lots of gold and some sad stories. The Aztecs and Incas are definitely interesting cultures to examine. But when both these guys show up, they pretty much wipe out the Aztecs and the Incas. So the legacy of the conquistadors is that they show up, they take a bunch of gold, and they kill lots of people through disease. They're going to inspire more violence against Native Americans as the years progress, unfortunately. One of the good things to come about this, and bad thing depending on your perspective, is called the Columbian Exchange. So the Columbian Exchange, after Columbus, more explorers are going to sail to the Americas. They're going to bring with them plants, animals, people, and disease. Disease is obviously a big killer. They also bring ideas. They bring their own fashion sense as well. This movement will become known as the Columbian Exchange. So some positive: Europeans and natives are exposed to new plants, new animals, and new technology. Some of the big negatives are obviously diseases. So without the Columbian Exchange, we would have a lot less food than we currently do today. So obviously, let's think about some things food-wise. Tomatoes. Tomatoes, obviously, we use in all sorts of dishes, whether it's for pizza or potentially salsa, things like that. Tomatoes are not local to Europe or Africa. They were found in North and South America. You also get potatoes, right? You get your French fries, your potato chips, things like that. That is local to North and South America. So people in Ireland, they didn't have potatoes. People in Russia, they didn't have potatoes. People over in Spain didn't have potatoes until the Columbian Exchange happened. Okay. We also get horses that are not native to North and South America. So people from Europe, they began bringing horses over here, and they traded horses for plants and other products. So horses never existed in North or South America until the Columbian Exchange. So you can kind of look into this. There's all sorts of different things that got traded back and forth. And because of this Columbian Exchange, we now have foods that would have never existed before without it. So that's definitely some positives. The negative is the Spanish, the Portuguese. When they come over here, they're bringing a lot of disease, such as smallpox, and they end up killing 1 million to 50 million people here in North and South America. They're not entirely sure the numbers, but they kill lots of people through diseases. Okay, another negative obviously is slavery, and let's talk about that real quickly. Okay, so this, not 1492, but around this era, we start to slowly get the slave trade. The European empires are very large. They're much larger than their home countries. You know, we look at the Portuguese here. That's Portugal right there, and look at that. Okay, they control a huge chunk of land down here. We get Spain. Look at how much territory over here Spain controls. So they're going to need workers to work on some of this land, to ensure that they're looking for gold and producing crops and things like that. So the Native Americans, they're refusing to give up their lives to work for wages. They don't want to work the land. And also another problem is they die off very quickly when they're enslaved or exposed to diseases. Diseases are just all these European, they had all these diseases. They had their immune system had kind of gotten used to some of them. They bring them over. These people had never been exposed to them. So we slowly get the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, so here we have the Atlantic. Okay, it's created by Portugal and Spain. They're going to trade with West Africa. Okay, they're going to give some West African empires guns, rum. They're going to give them all sorts of other things as well for Africans that they're going to enslave and then bring over. So essentially, Portugal and Spain are coming over here. They're trading with some of these local African rulers who are then going out and like capturing other tribes and bringing them over. And then Spain and Portugal, they're bringing them over here. Okay, the slave trade will increase as demand for goods increase. So this goes back to the law of supply and demand. Okay, and we're not going to get into that right now. But so we have sugar, tobacco, cotton. All of these things are coming back to Europe. And Europe's like, these are great. We want more of them. Okay, so they have to go down here. They're going to use their textiles, their rum, their manufactured goods in Africa to trade with some of the African rulers along here to get more slaves. And then they're bringing those slaves over to the Americas to work the land. Okay. Anyway, you also have what's called indentured servants. Okay, these are essentially poor European laborers that are brought over. They essentially sign a contract for 47 years. They would work in exchange for passage to North America. Master would require to provide land and money when their contract expired. The death rate will make this very cheap. Obviously, death happened a lot and it was very frequent due to disease, as well as the journey over was very hard. It was not an easy journey to cross the Atlantic. Conditions begin to improve in North America. The first Africans arrive in Jamestown, essentially North America, in the 1600s, probably indentured servants. So we will slowly get more into the slave trade as we get into our next unit. But this is kind of the just rough introduction to it. So Columbian Exchange, there was some good things food-wise. There was some bad things disease-wise, as well as slavery. Some of the big explorers we talked about today: Hernan Cortez, Christopher Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci. One of the big points for today: God, glory, and gold. The three motivating factors for these explorers. And the two big leaders in all of this would have been Spain and Portugal. Okay, and they wanted to find a quicker way to get to where? Asia, so they could get spices and things like this. And the world got turned upside down by this event. All right, guys, that's all for today.